This podcast is brought to you by Bernie's Tap and Grill. It's family owned and operated since 1954. Located across from Wrigley Field on Clark and Waveland. My dad hit a few home runs on the Waveland Avenue, and Bernie's was my dad's favorite place to go. It's got delicious food, 4 full-service bars, an awesome beer garden, a sidewalk patio cafe, and a cool upstairs area. It's the place I've always met my friends at before and after games. Go on by and tell Linda Dillman Jeff Santos sent you. Bernie's Tap and Grill, where you go when you go to Wrigley.
Sit back and relax. It's time for peanuts, popcorn, and Cracker Jacks.
Hey, how's it going? I'm your host, Jeff Santo, and I'm here with my wife, Christy.
Hello, hello.
So this is our last episode of the season.
Well, no, we have 2 episodes.
Yeah.
Our last guest.
Our last guest.
Season.
And 2 more Cracker Jacks. Boy, can you believe it when we started? We start this in April?
I know. I couldn't believe it. I mean, this has really been wonderful. I mean...
Yeah, it's amazing, you know. It's just, you know, going back into my past with a lot of people I knew growing up with my dad and me and you talking about our life during this kind of journey on the podcast.
And really getting to know these amazing people that are in baseball or in entertainment. And so it's been fascinating to hear people's stories.
It is. Yeah, it really has been. I mean, you know, and it makes you think, like, the older you get, you know, I'm 60. You're getting a little older too. Not as old
45.
as me. 45. There's a big gap there, but it's a good gap. Our fathers were the same age.
Yes, my father was actually a month older than yours.
Yeah, amazing, right? Yeah. So we grew up with the same kind of, that era, that man and woman, and things are different today. But looking back on a lot of things in just this podcast, it has been so fulfilling, and we want to continue this, next February. We're going to.
Yes, we're going to. So there's going to be a whole slew of new amazing guests.
Yep.
And in the off season, we're still going to be putting up exclusive content on our Patreon, and we might even do a live stream. So
maybe we got a lot to do. There's a lot for us to do.
We do have a lot to do.
So,
but we might do one.
Yeah.
So just stay tuned on either on our Patreon or on our social medias.
Yeah. And getting to this last episode per se with our special guest, it really makes me start thinking about the journey, the Joseph Campbell journey, because I read Joseph Campbell when I made that switch to Hollywood and left my hometown and had to stop at certain places. And I know you've had your amazing journey too. And together we found each other, and I'm 60, like I said, and I feel like I'm tapping into that kid that I really liked when I was young, and the environment I was in. And it's weird because once that kid goes away, it's a long journey back to him. and
back to him in a different perspective.
Yes,
because you're older and wiser now, and you've had the bumps and the bruises and learned your lessons. And
yeah, and it's the wisdom, and I just feel like, the older you get, the more that you got to get deeper into your heart and who you love and what you love. And
it's so true. It's like when you're young, you're just trying to figure out yourself. You're just trying to figure out how you fit in the world. And, as you get older, you start to think about, the community and the world that's around you, and having people around you who wise to that same kind of mindset.
Yeah. I think you find your pack in a way, or people that are on your same path, and it changes throughout your life. Some people stay at home. They don't leave their home. And that's great. They're comfortable there. Some
people can evolve in that situation.
Yeah. And some people have to leave and have to go. And, we were a couple of people that needed to go, and when you go, it's difficult. You don't know where you're going to wind up. You know that something's pushing you forward. And you meet different people along the way that you start to find your groove of who you want to be and strive to be that person, but it's difficult. There's a lot of struggle, right? And same for the people that stay home and got to find their place there with their family, and people leave, and it's just like you figured out, like, I can go back and meet some friends that I grew up with that I haven't talked to in a while, that I don't stay in touch with, but when I see them, we smile and we talk about old times, but that's what it is.
Yeah.
And then there's some friends that you grew up with that you do stick together through it. And maybe you've lost touch over the years, but you come back to them. And there's something that you have that is in sync with them. And it's great to have those kind of friends too, that know who you really are, and know the journey you went on, and you know the journey they went on, and you're honest with each other, and you don't expect anything from each other, just the friendship. And that you know each other, and you know that there's a place in their heart and your heart for each other. And I really think that's what it's about when you get older, is to really not die a bitter person. I just feel that way, and not to
and to treat people kindly, and
the world's a mess, man. Look at it, And Joseph Campbell always said, if people just took care of themselves and made themselves better, the world would be better.
Oh, so true.
And and not enough people really look deep enough to go, okay, what is the problem? Why am I frustrated? Why am I angry? What's going on in my life? What am I expecting? Are my expectations too high on other people? When it comes down to it,
how am I affecting other people? And
you have to be responsible for your path, for your actions. And I think people get behind you when you do work hard to do that.
Right.
And you see
because
people
no one's perfect.
No. And why I go back to being a kid, because when we were kids, we were all really honest, in those young days. And then other things pull you in different directions. And a lot of times you don't know how that friend you had, what his household was like, right?
So true.
You don't understand how he grew up, and you might think, oh, we have something in common, but at the end of the day, maybe you don't. And you see it on the long run. You see maybe you didn't have all that much in common, but you liked him for the time you spent with him, right? Or her, or whoever.
Yeah, I think I regret keeping my cards close to my chest with my friends, because I had a traumatic situation as a kid. I was best friends with this girl who lived across the street from me, and in 5th grade, we finally went to the same school, because I jumped around a bunch of different schools, and she finally switched to my school. And so on the second day of school, she comes up to me and says, I'll be friends with you at home, but act like you don't know me at school. And it just totally broke my heart. And I think because of that situation, I never fully gave myself over to another friend. And so I have girls who I was friends with who I just felt like I never got that closeness with them, So I look at you, and you still keep in contact more so than I do with my childhood friends. I do have some friends that I keep in contact with, but it's like once a year.
Right. Yeah. I think we're opposite on that. I had a lot of friends growing up because of the environment I grew up with, my dad and everything. But it also, that could hit you with a ton of bricks too, when you find out, like, well, maybe there's not those solid friends, and
that's true. I did have wings
to
go.
Yeah. And so it works on both sides, where it could be difficult, because I think the true friend, companion on the road, is someone who has a lot in common with you, whether it's a craft that you're doing, like, writing. We have a lot in common, me and you, and also leaving the nest, and finding our place and finding our identity is difficult. But at the same time, I know you so deeply, and you have changed my life so profoundly that I feel like it enlightens you even more to go, God, there is this deep thing that sometimes you take advantage of some of the friendships you have because you don't go there. But when you do go there, you don't want to leave that place anymore, and you want to give that person too their own space, And I just love that. I feel like we're both independent people, but we need each other now. Does that make sense?
We're on a raft in the middle of the ocean together.
Yeah, and it's just, but I love it, and I feel like, here's the thing too. You start getting closer to where you're not, your years. There's not as many anymore. I'm on the second part of my life. You're kind of halfway, I hope. You know what I mean?
No, for sure. Hopefully.
Yeah. And, when I go, I want to go with a smile on my face. I really do. I made my mind up, about that. And when my dad passed away, I felt like, it wasn't a Brian Piccolo moment. There weren't the players coming into town. He didn't tell anyone that he was struggling, that he was getting chemo. His cancer really came back. He kind of kept that quiet. That's who he was. He didn't want to put that burden on anyone to say, oh, Ron, he had a good life. He knew it. And I remember looking him in the eyes. I was the last one to see him in his hospital room. And I remember saying, do you want the movie on, Dad? You want me to? No, you could turn it off. And I remember just like grabbing his hand, and he looked at me and said, I love you very much, son. Like he knew something, like he wasn't going to be around the next day. It was weird. And it was peaceful to, like, it was just like he knew it was over, and he did everything he could do in his life, and he was good with it, and he didn't want to burden anyone to talk about what was going to happen, because he knew it. And I that's a special thing, like, to know, like, this is my life. I'm responsible for it. I lived it the best I could. I did a lot of cool things. And, I'm going to go. Not in a big way. I'm going to go. And I even felt that with, like, I say that about Sonny Barger. I remember getting a text from his wife, Zorana, saying, Sonny says, thank you for everything, doing the movie. And he knew he was dying. But those kind of men are men. And there's a strength there, man. And I love that strength. It just now it lives in me. It's like, and I guess it's called wisdom when you get there, like just understanding your life's path, understanding that you made mistakes, understanding that you might have let people down, but at the same time, you learn from it, and you're going to be better. You're going to do better because you know better. And I think, having a good attitude during struggles and is the key. Once your attitude goes, then what are you?
Yeah.
And, and I want to leave happy. I want you to be happy, and I want us to fulfill our dreams the best we can moving forward. And that to me is like, when you have a dream, life is hopeful. When you don't, it becomes a little miserable.
Yeah. And we have a lot left to do, and we have so much that we're doing. So.
Yeah. And I feel like, I'm going to have two of my dear friends on as Cracker Jacks for these next two segments. And, we've known each other over 40 some years, and we've lost contact during our lives at times, but we came back together, and I love that. And we're just going to reminisce, and they've been Cracker Jacks, on our podcast. They've been cool Cracker Jacks that have been paying attention to from day one. And that's beautiful when you have a friend that has paid attention to something new that you're doing, and it's also like, man, I'm enjoying listening to this and hearing all the people in your life before maybe I even knew you,
Yeah.
And it's just that's just wonderful. And
then we have a newer friend as the guest.
Yeah, Peter Conti. And Peter is a writer and a great author, #1 bestseller on Amazon author. And I just
he really does have a gift for words.
He does, and he's just a cool cat, man. And he's that kind of guy that I've met on this journey, and I wish I met him earlier, but I'm glad I met him, and we know each other, and I hope to know him the rest of my life. But those are special people that are doing the same thing you're doing, are in that same lane. And it feels good to be with people who have struggled and know exactly where you're coming from and what you're doing and what you're striving to constantly be. So it's going to be great to have Peter on.
So enjoy.
Hey, everybody. I was in Encino, California the other day at a meeting. And I get out of there, and I'm hungry as can be, man. And there's traffic, LA traffic. And I'm thinking, I got to get some side streets here like my dad did in Wrigley. And I wind up at Coldwater Canyon and Riverside Drive, and there's Gino's East Pizza. Boom, park the car, go inside, and I order a tavern pizza, cheese and sausage, my favorite, top 3 foods of all time. And there's the owner, Dan and Todd, and they're like, hey, man, you're on the TV. I'm like, yeah, right, guys. They love to razz me once in a while. And sure enough, I was. My dad's documentary from MLB was playing. But I had no time for that. I had to eat my pizza. I devoured that thing in a minute.
I was so hungry. You got to go to Gino's East for the greatest pizza around. Gino's East, LA. Put it in your Google's map right now. It's going to be our place to go, me and Christy, on Friday's happy hour. Go to Gino's East, right near Coldwater Canyon and the 101. Put it in your Google's map now. We'll see you there.
My special guest today is a #1 best-selling Amazon author. He's a dear friend of mine. I wish I knew him long ago, and I wish I could spend more time with him. I'm going to read his author note in his best-selling book, Gringo. Here's how he put it. I imagine that when most folks my age tell their friends they are going on a cross-country road trip, they hear things like, "You should look up my old college roommate," or "My brother moved to Wisconsin." Not me. My pal Bobby the chef said, "You got to go see my friend Eddie, who's doing 20 at Yazoo City. He's looking for a writer." My buddy Vito tried to get me to go see his guy who was doing life in Marion. My friend Mike said, I had to stop to see Tito, who was finishing up doing a dime in Wyoming. Tito had written a manuscript Mike said was a brilliant mess. And you chose Tito. My guest, Peter Conti. Why did you choose Tito?
To be honest, it was the only one that paid. I a lot of times wise guys, I grew up where I grew up, so I know a lot of those guys, or they know of me. They'll come to me and they'll want me to write something, and it'll always be the same thing. You write, I tell, and then we whack it up, and then I don't see anything because I've ghosted a few of those stories. And I know that terrain well, and I had a writing professor at UCLA, and usually you hear the adage, write what you know. His thing was, write what you don't know. Go out and learn about it and then write about it, and it'll be fresh. So I think that's something that I've really taken to heart. So I didn't know anything about Tito's world, right? Anything. He's from the Midwest. He was a jockey. He was making $1 million a week, comparable $1 million a week when he was at UNLV as a student. I wrote about a lot of places I had never been. Cuba, Venezuela, and that was challenging. But again, with the internet and other interviews, I kind of pieced it together. But I think I did a decent job of just seeing this guy. And probably the most unbelievable thing that I learned working with him and a couple other people, that the most dangerous people in the world are spiteful people. That's more than any gangster or any tough guy. Spiteful people are the most dangerous, because he had evaded authorities for 13 years. He had Interpol, everybody after him, and he only got caught. He was in Venezuela. He went to Venezuela because Chavez had called Bush the devil in the UN, and we were practically at war with Venezuela, and they would never extradite anyone. So he was there. He had plastic surgery twice. And they had no idea where he was after 13 years, and his best friend's wife ratted him out because the best friend had cheated on her. So to spite the best friend. And I do think spitefulness is by far the scariest thing.
Right. So you brought that out in the book. It kind of like the theme there that he had that eventually got him.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, you look at a guy like that, you're right. He is much different than you, but you've had so much experience with people over the years. I'm sure he fit in somewhere once you got to know him, like, okay, I could see where Tito is different from the guys you grew up with, but you can see maybe some of the choices he made, or how did that go, bringing your stories into his story?
He just was tenacious more than anybody I know, and he still is. It became a #1 bestseller because of him. Nothing that I did, right? He went all over the world and promoted that book. He did a really smart marketing thing. He did a book signing in Antarctica. So he was the only author in history that did book signings on the 7 continents, which was so he got a lot of press on that, and he got press in major publications. And I don't know how many reviews we have on Amazon. It's thousands, though.
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
You know what I mean?
It's amazing, and to see, like, he was just a normal kid, grew up in South Dakota, I believe.
Yeah, South Dakota.
And he was a horse jockey at 16, professional horse jockey. He was a wrestler, a national kite surfing champion, and was an international fugitive for over 13 years across more than 54 countries. He evaded the FBI, CIA, DEA, U.S. Marshals, mercenaries, guerrilla organizations, personal kidnappers, career hitmen, and vigilantes.
Yep.
I mean, you're talking about a guy that knew how to survive. And
a spiteful wife took him down. Right?
At the end of the day, right? That's how it rolls, right?
Yeah.
It's the spiteful people. I think you're right, are the most dangerous. And yeah, there are a lot of them out there, And I think, the survivor element of it, Peter, is a lot of you too. I mean, you could identify with that, I believe, because it seems like, Christy and I always talk about, you're like the protagonist in a noir film.
Yeah.
We've always talked about that, man. And I feel like, you're the guy we root for. You get along with mostly anyone. You could kind of adapt to most places. I get that guy, and I'm mostly on his side with his actions. You are that kind of guy amongst a lot of different people because you're a writer. What's that like sometimes? So it feels like it's a big struggle too.
The writing, it's not bad. It really isn't. I'm lucky because I have the teaching that helps. You know what I mean? So I've never, I like teaching, and it keeps me in tune to young people. So I know how young people think and act. You know what I mean? Because I don't have any kids. You know what I mean? So I like teaching. And the writing has been up and down. I've sold 8 scripts, which is good. I think I've written 15. I've sold 8, which isn't bad. But I started off with a bang. And I always think it's kind of like Dan Marino, right? Dan Marino, he comes out of Pitt. He goes to the Dolphins. First year, he makes it to the Super Bowl. And then he never gets back, right? And when he lost that first Super Bowl, he was 23 years old. He was like, "Oh, I'll be back." You know what I mean? It was no big deal. And he never got back. And I think my early success, I was published at 19. Then I had the string of hit plays in my 20s, in my early 20s. Like, it just should have been easier. And then I made the egregious mistake of going back to school. Like, that was just, going back to New York and going back to school was just the stupidest thing I ever did in my life. So who knows? Like, I remember Rob, our friend Rob Weiss, right? I remember when I decided to come back to LA after, I think, 12 years. And I decided to come back, and I hit him up, and he's like, you got to decide if you want to be a gangster or you want to be a writer. And I said, I'm not a gangster. He goes, yeah, but everybody thinks you are. If somebody doesn't return your phone call, you slap them or you get mad, and you know what I mean? He goes, if somebody doesn't return my phone call and I see him at the Lakers game, I hugged him. I'll never forget he said that, right? So I guess I've tried to be more like Rob Weiss, right? Which is unbelievable in itself. But seriously, I think that's the thing. Coming back this second time, coming back to LA, came back in 2015. I've just tried to be a little more low-key than I was when I was first out here. Getting in trouble, hanging out. And I thought I was famous because I was hanging out with so many famous people.
Right.
And you wake up and you're like, no, they're famous. I'm not. You know what I mean? So I think that's a big big change in me. But I don't, it's up and down. It really is. I don't know. Like, if I had I came up with Rob. I came up with Scott Rosenberg. We all kind of came up together at the same time, and they blew past me. But they also are out here more calculated in their careers, and I respect them for that because I wasn't.
Right.
Would I like to be in a writer's room? If I got a job in a writer's room, I'd take it because it's good money. But it's not something I really aspired to do.
Yeah, but you're a novelist, man, too. You're a writer from the heart, like literally, like I say, Peter Conti's a writer. He's an author. A little different than being just a screenwriter or getting movies made, a filmmaker. You're definitely, you're a professor of the written word. So you've studied the written word your whole life, basically, man. I mean, observed it growing up. Talk a little bit about growing up. Where did you grow up?
I grew up mostly in New York City, but then I went to middle school in Providence, Rhode Island. Then I went back to college. My mom's from Providence. My dad's from New York. So I grew up in Manhattan, in Little Italy, which back then nobody wanted to live in New York back then. You know, just nobody wanted to live in the '70s. New York was not a great place. It was going bankrupt, violence. People think it's violent now. It's so funny, right? And the violence has been upticked. So I think it went from like about 4 years ago, before COVID, I think there were about 275 murders. And then it's peaked now. Last year, it went up to like 400 murders, which is significant. 1990, there were 2,600 murders. You know, it was Chicago, basically, what Chicago's like now. So it was very violent. And when I was growing up, crack and AIDS hit simultaneously. So it was a very rough time growing up. I lived a lot of people in a small apartment. So it was definitely poor. And my father was in and out of prison, so it was just poor. And it's funny because a lot of poor people say, "Well, we didn't know it was poor. We didn't know we were poor because everybody was poor." No, I knew we were poor. You know, I knew it, right? Because I had rich friends, and
Right.
so I think somebody said about Bruce Springsteen one time, how can he write about blue collar people when he's worth hundreds of millions of dollars? It's kind of like it's how you grow up. That's why he
Yeah.
gets kind of the respect that he should be able to do that. You know what I mean? He's not pretending he grew up. You
Yep.
know that's his background, right? Jersey, blue collar. So I think growing up poor, it's different. That's all I can say. It's not fun.
Was your dad around much?
No, he was in prison a lot of times, you know. And then my mom, she moved to Rhode Island. I went with her middle school, and then I moved back and went to high school in New York. So
When did you know you wanted to be a writer?
it was freshman year. There was this contest. They did the whole freshman class had to write a paper, and the theme was how write a plan to eradicate racism in the United States. And it was like a 10-page paper. And everybody was doing all these corny things like, well, we have to educate. We're all educated. We know about slavery and Jim Crow. That didn't help, right? All of these, they were really lame, kind of. I thought they were lame. So the plan I came up with was I said, for one generation, if you want to have a child, you got to have it with somebody from a different race. And then at the end of the generation, at the end of the 12, 14 years, everybody will be mixed, and that'll be the end of it. And it won the contest. So, and then that same year, I got published in a book called 20 Under 20. So it was 20 writers under 20 years old. So I got published in that, and it was about mine was about sandlot football. I love playing sandlot football. My high school didn't have a football team, so you know it was I love football. It's probably, if I could have played any sport, it would probably be middle linebacker in football. You know, that would be, I think, the most fun position ever. So yeah, I did. And then, you know, I had two big influences. I got around very, very young, two actors, Mickey Rourke and Joe Pesci, and they both kind of nurtured me and helped me a lot. Mickey's funny. He goes, I know you want to be a writer, but you should do some acting because then you can get in the Writers Guild. Made no sense, right? So put me in a couple movies, and then I ended up directing him in a workout video. Probably the worst thing ever, with Boom Boom Mancini, who was a world champion boxer, and Freddie Roach, who's a Hall of Fame trainer, and Mickey. So I wrote and directed that. And then Joe, who's obviously a great actor too, he produced four of my plays. So that really is where I really learned how to write, were those plays.
Wow. Yeah, he wrote a couple things here from your book, your first book, which the title of that, Whatever Happened to Martin Barnett, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And he wrote, it's so refreshing to finally read an author who can really write about the streets the right way. And that was Joe Pesci.
Yeah.
And you've hung out, you had a tough upbringing, but you always seem to kind of find the right path. Like you're on the sidewalk and then you're on the the muddy path, but you're good at making sure you don't get caught on that other side where it takes you away from who you really are.
No, I don't know if that's true. You know me later in life, you know what I mean? But I messed up a lot of opportunities when I was young. Arrogance, gangster stuff, violence. You know what I mean? I messed up a lot when I had a lot of opportunities. I had written a screenplay for Joe called The Cruise that they said it was going to be the next. Universal said it was going to be the next major film there, and it didn't end up going. And that kind of put me in a tailspin because it was good. It was really good. It was really funny. Joe and I worked really hard on it, and at the end of the day, they pulled the plug at the last second. They bought it, pulled the plug, and didn't, and they put it in turnaround. So that kind of really pissed me off because I just put in so much work on that thing, took so many notes from the execs and stuff, and just kept working it, and it should have gone. It was funny, but it didn't, and that's part of the business. And then there's just been so many close things, and it should have been. I think it should have been easier than it has been, but you just never know where it's going. Like now, back then in the 90s, yeah, I did get off the path too much, and I think that's why I went back to New York. Well, I went back to New York. I went back. Actually, I lived, which was hell, in Boston for a year, which was the worst year of my life probably. But
a Yankee fan in Boston.
Yeah, it was awful. Right, just awful.
Yeah.
Red Sox, this and that. But I do like Pedro Martinez, and he was pitching for them. I always liked Pedro. I like smaller pitchers. I like Maddox. I like.
How'd you become a baseball fan? You talk finally about football. Where does baseball stand for you?
Yankees growing up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was just a place to go. You used to go to Yankees games, $5. You could go and watch the Yankees. So we always went up to the Bronx, sneaked in a bunch of times, snuck in a bunch of times. And, there was a big drought for a long time. The Yankees didn't win. And then 77, 78, where, it was just a fun time to be a baseball fan. It was an absolute fun
What do you like
time.
about the game?
I like to listen to it, and I think it's the only sport you can really listen to. I really enjoy, I like listening. Now he passed away. Who was the guy the voice of the Dodgers?
Vince Scully.
Vince Scully. It would just be so relaxing to listen to him. But I even like listening to. I just like that about it, and I like the history of it.
Mm-hmm.
So I taught a class years ago, and I should teach it again. I just haven't been asked to. And it's 20th century history through baseball. So I did a lot with like Hank Greenberg and anti-Semitism.
Sure.
Obviously Jackie Robinson, and kind of like the 50s when DiMaggio was married to Marilyn Monroe, and how that like kind of transcended sport. It's funny because you see it now on a lesser degree. Well, who knows if it's lesser, but with Taylor Swift and that football player, you know what I mean? And I was thinking like when DiMaggio was going with her, you know what I mean? And there was that great quote that said, she came back from doing the with the troops. What do they call that?
USO tour or something?
Yeah, US. And she came back and she goes, "Oh, Joe, you can't believe it. 50,000 people cheering. You can never believe it." He goes, "Yes, I can." You know what I mean? So I think that summed up their whole.
He was a pretty big guy. A famous guy, Joe DiMaggio, one of the most famous ball players ever, I would think.
And she was probably one of the few people in the world that was more famous than him.
Yeah.
If you think about it, right?
Yeah.
You ever read? It's my favorite novel of the 20th century. Underworld.
No, you told me about that, and I have to.
But it starts in a baseball game, 1951. The Brooklyn Dodgers against the Giants shot heard around the world. You familiar with that?
Yes.
Yeah. And but they have in the fans, it's Sinatra, Toots Shore, Jackie Gleason.
Toots.
Yeah, Jackie Gleason. And who's the head of the CIA
Toots
or the
Shore.
FBI? J. Edgar.
Yeah.
J.
Hoover.
Edgar. So it's the four of them watching the game, and
Fictionalized version of that game.
yeah, exactly. And that. So I just I don't get this whole thing about baseball being too long. I like length, but I like length in books too.
Yeah.
I love yours and Chrissy's book. I love it, but I thought it could have been longer. And I
Yeah.
said that. You know what I mean? I just thought it could have been longer.
Yeah. Well, thank you for.
I like longer
Yeah,
books.
baseball though, man. Hey, listen. If people aren't watching on TV, you got to do something about it. I mean, it became longer because of bad habits. It didn't become
I agree.
longer because, they're doing the same thing they did in the 60s and 70s. Those games rocked and rolled, 2.5 hours. So they had to
Well,
do
you had
something.
one or two pitchers too.
Yeah,
right.
come
So
on.
that was
yeah,
a
the
major
game
thing.
was a lot different. The game was more of the game you like listening to.
Yeah,
rather than the game now.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And a lot of it's not even the pitcher's fault. A lot of it's the batters.
Yeah,
You know what I
that too,
mean?
Yeah,
Just,
stopping their batting gloves and
Yeah.
stepping out of the box. Yeah.
I don't watch it. Like, I did not watch one pitch of the playoffs this year because I really think I'm a Yankees fan. I don't know how much of a baseball fan I am. To be honest. You know what I mean?
Well, I think again, we brought this up. Christy and I did that. Baseball, they're losing like the other teams. We don't know who's on each team anymore. Where before
Absolutely.
when we watched the World Series, we knew the heroes on the other team.
Absolutely. And
You
the
really did.
and the enemies. You
Yeah,
know what
yeah,
I mean?
you knew.
Those
Even-
great Red Sox Yankees
Yeah.
rivalries. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You knew Big Papi.
But even when the Dodgers played the Yankees, you knew each
You knew
team.
everybody.
Man. You knew Garvey. You knew
Absolutely.
who was on the Yankees.
Davy
and
Lopes
Reggie
and you know what I mean? Yeah. And
so you don't have that feel so much anymore because times have changed. But getting back to your writing, man, the thing that I find fascinating is you've lived this life, this tough life, but and maybe I obviously I met you later on, but I feel like I could look back on my life too and go, oh, I made a mistake there. We've all made our mistakes, right? It's about growing and especially being a writer. I mean, the growing in that end of it for me. I mean, even since I just, when my wife and I got married, 13 years ago, what she brought to the table for me, so many elements bring you and enhance your writing, also enhance who you are too. Don't you feel that? I mean, you can't
Absolutely.
be so hard on yourself like I
No,
missed an
no,
opportunity. I feel like personally, you're more this author and you're dabbling in, the screenplay Hollywood world that never stays straight, with an answer ever, We have the same troubles, I have a couple things that I thought were going to happen, didn't happen. But it's like, how do you find that stream that you're happy in? Have you found that now?
I think I've always been pretty happy,
Yeah.
to be honest. But there's still anger in that happiness. You see a bunch of people passing you by that you're better than. You know what I mean? And it's not like, that's what I love about sports. You get in the ring with someone.
Right.
You get in the ring with someone, you're going to beat them up. You know what I mean? For the most part, right? You're pitching. Mariano's the best closer ever, and he's pitching. It doesn't matter. He's going to get them out for the most part. And if he doesn't, if they get better than him, you know what I mean? But
True.
sports, I like the honesty of sports at the end of the day.
Right.
You know what I mean? And there isn't with Hollywood. You know what I mean? There's so many other factors. There's so many other things. It's not about necessarily whose script is better or you know what I mean?
Right. No, it's a lot of, who you're trying to get in there. But again, I go to you as a writer and I go, okay, you still have this novel side, right?
And I've been working on a novel for about 20 years. And I can't, every time I sit down and work with it, I'll get another job. So it's really hard to do something on spec when you can get paid for doing other things, And it's, I think it could be it's a fake autobiography about a woman, Beachy Benetti, autobiography of Beachy Benetti, and it's her childhood and a lot of things, and a lot of stuff that I grew up with, a lot of I put a lot of stuff of stuff that I knew happened or I had heard happened in there, and it's really a historical kind of thing, and it was supposed to be, she was 50, now I made her 60 because just times have changed, and I wanted to put stuff earlier. And it's just getting back and writing it. I need 6 months, you know what I mean, to really get a good part of it, of doing nothing else.
Right.
And that's the thing about the difference about writing books as opposed to any other genre. You need the time. You can write poetry, you can write screenplays, you can write plays and do other things. You can't do that with books.
No.
It's just, you can't.
We
It's
did it.
different.
We wrote our book over over COVID.
Yeah,
if we didn't have that time, there's just no way.
And you guys, I know you're both storytellers, right?
Yep.
But I thought it was one of the best first books I ever read. You know what I
thank you,
mean?
man.
And it was just like out of nowhere, you guys wrote a great book, and that doesn't usually happen. And I don't, and as I wrote in the blurb, I'm not even a noir fan. You know what I mean? But that made me a fan. That book. And again, the style was cool, but the characters, I think it was a character-driven piece as much as it was stylistic, and I think, and maybe it's because you two write together. I thought the male and female leads were equal, which is hard to do.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And maybe working together, right?
Oh yeah, to me it was beautiful. It was. I took in so much from her world that you start to look at your side of things, understand it even more, right?
Were you a noir fan?
I kind of, my first film had a little bit of that in there. Liar's Poker had a bit of an edge. I don't think consciously I was so much, but yeah, subconsciously, definitely. Because I really gravitate towards it now. And like Raymond Chandler, Philip Marlowe, you are a lot like a Philip Marlowe, man.
Funny.
Because you can go in most places, you can hang out with tough guys and be tough yourself, but you could also be sensible to walk out of a room when you need to, and so I just love those kind of characters. And I feel like I've kind of lived a bit of that life too in some ways, just growing up in a clubhouse with my father and, larger than life baseball heroes to, doing a project with Sonny Barger and the Hells Angels.
Absolutely. You did it. You're the same way. There's no
so-
doubt about it. And, I've always thought that about you. And I do think, you guys have such a healthy marriage, right? And I got married this year, as you know.
Yeah.
And I think marriage makes you healthy.
Yeah.
Because I was reading this article in the Times about people that live alone for long periods of time, and they become weirdos, right? You just become weird, like because it was saying like you can walk around in your underwear all day, and you know what I mean, or you can eat cereal at night, or you can, your dryer becomes your armoire, right? Because you just pull out something out of the dryer when and it's not, it's weird, it's weird. And being married, thank God I didn't get married. I got married when I was 19, but that was just for a year. But I mean, I wonder how my life would have been differently had I gotten married 10, 15 years ago. You know what I mean? Because I think it does add a lot of structure. One of the cool things about being married is you're responsible for somebody else. So you can't just be wild all the time. You know what I mean? And I got a very supportive wife, and she's been very good for me. You know what I mean?
No doubt.
But that's that's only been the last year. But I like spending time at home, so that's really good for being a writer. You know what I mean? I like because I remember another professor I had. He said you got to have a safe space where you write. You got to be comfortable. You know what I mean? You got to be comfortable where you write, and I think that's an important thing.
That moment was brought to you by the Audio Suite, a sound recording, design, editorial, and mixing company for film, broadcast, advertising, music, podcast, audiobooks, and multimedia industries. The Audio Suite provides high-quality services at cost-effective solutions to meet your post-production needs. Voiceover, narration, ADR, sound design, sound effects, editorial and sweetening, recording, mixing, mastering, audio restoration, and more. The Audio Suite will get you to the finish line on time and on budget. Steve Harrison, owner, designer, mixer, has decades of experience and has worked with various clients from HBO Films to Penguin Random House, to us, Santo Films. When we needed post-production mastering for our independent film Dead in 5 Heartbeats, the Audio Suite was our go-to place. Steve is knowledgeable, reliable, and always delivers the highest quality. Go to www.audiosuitestudios.com. We highly recommend.
Cracker Jack.
Dog call is being recorded.
Dog!
Dog.
You are my Cracker Jack. You are a cool Cracker Jack
man.
who is at my Cracker Jack this week. Jim McCall.
How
Well,
are you?
I never
buddy?
thought this. I never thought this day would come, my friend.
Yeah, you did. Come on. You knew I was going to reach out. Oh, yeah.
Oh boy.
So here's the thing, man. You grew up in the tall trees. I lived in the valley low. Tall trees, obviously, subdivision of Glenview, Illinois, valley low also. I got to say we grew up about 10 football fields away from each other. Am I correct?
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, right?
Half a
Now-
mile, maybe half a mile.
Yeah. An easy bike ride, right?
Yeah.
So how long do you think we've known each other?
You know, like I don't remember when we even first met. I mean, it's
Right.
that long ago, right?
Right.
So it has to be. I'm guessing like your freshman year of high school, maybe, or no, actually probably before that.
Yeah, I think, no, here's the thing about it, which is so cool. You went to OLPH in grade school, right? So you went to Catholic school. I go to Lions School. Now, I know a bunch of people at OLPH. So, I knew Billy Savino young. Like, I remember Billy in 1974, he slept over at our house 10 nights in a row. So, yeah, crazy, right? Well, when you got 11 brothers and sisters, he probably got a little bit of relief coming to our house. But the funny thing was, when he left our house, I heard, God, the Sanos yell a lot. I'm thinking, the Savino's got 11 kids. He's telling us we yell a lot. So, kind of funny. But you hung out with Billy, and I knew about you, right? I think we played some type of football, maybe. I'm not sure, but I never asked this question to you. None of my friends are like, when did you know that where we lived? Like, heard of my dad being in Valley Low. Do you remember that?
So it's funny. Yeah, it's funny. So you're right. I have a memory of being pretty young, right? I'm gonna say, I don't know. What year did you move into Valley Low?
69.
Okay, so I'm gonna say.
Well, 68. The winter of 68. Yeah.
Okay, so maybe like fourth or fifth. I remember for being at your house on your front lawn with a bunch of guys playing football, and your dad was a quarterback.
Wow.
And I'm like an offensive lineman. I'm blocking someone, right?
Wow.
And I remember your dad, like I don't know, he must have said something to me, like coached me somehow, and like push that guy out of the way or something. And I remember the next play, whoever it was, I blocked, and I must have blocked him like 20 yards downfield because your dad was like, "Okay, that's good."
Wow. What? That's not what? When was that? Like, how old were you?
I was young. I mean, I was young.
You were at
couldn't tell
OLPH
you.
at the time. You had to be at OL at that time.
Probably,
right?
Yeah, and probably before. It was not like my 6th or 7th or 8th grade or anything. It was before that.
Yeah.
Because I was.
When did you move into Tall Trees?
Would have been around 70, 72, 73, something like that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So definitely, we definitely crossed paths a lot. And then we get to high school, and you're a year older. I hung out with the guys a year older. It's because of obviously Terry O'Brien was a year older. Jimmy Rosenberg was a year older. That's who I grew up, in our neighborhood. And then Dan Foley's a year older. And I just wound up, because of Terry, right? Because you and Dan were good friends with Terry. So I got to know you through Terry. And then, but I really got to know you like from football, meaning watching you play. Like, you were a stud, and I got to say this, you like literally that team that you guys had at Glenbrook South, your junior year, my brother's senior year, was one of the best football teams ever that I saw, in high school.
That was a pretty special year.
Yeah, right? Yeah. You guys should have won state. It's unfortunate you didn't. And you were a junior. I was a sophomore. And you started, man. And you were just, man, you could run, you could play D, and you weren't a big guy. Like, but you were out there like you were the biggest guy in the field. So, where did you get the confidence? Like early on, did you know you just were a good football player?
I don't know. So I was a really good football player in grade school. Like, I was more mature, you know, like I had matured earlier than a lot of the other guys, so I had a lot of success, and I think that just carried over. I also, you know, I learned at some point, like, okay, like guys started to grow and get bigger than me, right?
Right.
So I knew, like, you know, that was the thing I had against me. So I had to do everything well. Like I had to be like technically really, really sound in everything I did to make up for that size. I think that was like kind of my superpower, right?
Right. Yeah. And I also remember, like, when your senior year, you know, I went to prom my junior year with you guys with a senior girl, Sue Bone, which was out of my league at the time. But I went, you know, and she was kind of, you know, it was nice, but it was like, you know, she was dating with that guy who was the year ahead of her before. What's his name? Jody Stockton? Yeah, big football player, right? Yeah. I'm like, all right, she's coming. She thought I was a cute little baseball player. I'd have a little fun with Jeff Santo.
Hey, do you know, see, this is like us being old and forgetting shit, right? Do you know that Sue was my very first girlfriend at OPH?
Really?
Oh, yeah. We were like, no, dude, we were big time serious for like a year.
Who gets serious that young? Are you kidding me?
I did. What, you know, what in the world was I doing?
You did. You know, it's funny that you say that because I remember your senior year, my junior year, you know, and I remember, I think you guys just graduated. There was a pool parties going on that summer. And I remember going to one in the Willows, right? And I'm like, and we're there and it's mostly your class because I'm hanging out with you guys. And I'm like, look at Jim McCauley laying back in the pool. like he's Burt Reynolds, you know.
Come on.
No, dude, it was fun. It was great though. It wasn't like you were cocky, but you and
I was
Julie
Jim Reynolds.
Kruger. What? Yeah, but you and
I was
Julie
Jim
Kruger,
Reynolds.
you were just like, you know, you guys, and you wound up getting married, you know, and had a beautiful daughter, Jennifer, you know. So, but I remember that. I'm like, God, hey, look at Jim McCauley over there. Yeah, and you know, it was. But we had a lot of fun. That's when we started to get to know each other. Now you played baseball with Ronnie, then you played with me. Talk about you backed up Ronnie at third, right? In high school?
Yeah. So Ronnie was a senior, I was a junior. Ronnie scared the crap out of me, right? Because Ronnie was just like, well, and I never even got shot with the BB gun or anything like that, right? I mean, he just scared the crap. He was just. First of all, he was Ronnie, right? And he was a stud, right? But he was really quiet, you know. So you never really knew what you were getting, or you know how he thought of you, or anything else. But yeah, I remember. So and he's a freaking third baseman, right? We're at third base, and I listen. I had no business being at third base. Like I'm here to tell you, right? That was not my position. But like when you grow up in Little League, like the athletes are in the infield, right? I mean, you know, so I was always an infielder. Yeah. And then, but by the time I'm a junior in high school, like I should not have been playing third base. And, you know, Coach Block figured that out. I think he also saw, okay, we got Ronnie, you know, Jimmy's never going to play better than Ronnie. And then we got Jeff coming up. And Jeff's already better than them, so you know, like we gotta put him somewhere, you know.
Right,
so
right.
I got caught,
they put you.
I got caught in the Sano, you know, between Sano third base hell, I guess.
That's funny, man. You know, God, that's right. You were a good outfielder. You turned into a good left fielder. So the thing is, let me ask you about Ronnie. Like the difference between the two of us as ball players.
Would you say
I was nicer? I was nicer than Ronnie.
Oh yeah, I mean, like I said, Ronnie scared the crap out of me. You know, and like our paths must have crossed earlier in Little League, Pony League. Although we maybe never really played in the same league just because of age.
Maybe.
But difference between you and Ronnie. I mean, first of all, personality-wise, Ronnie scared the shit out of me. You know, you were friendly and gregarious and fun and had that laugh, and you know, you were just a great guy to be around. You know, Ronnie was. Would you say you or Ronnie were more talented?
That's a good question. I would say I was a better hitter because I just was. I was a good hitter. I think Ronnie was a better athlete overall. I think Ronnie was a hell of a third baseman.
You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
really,
Ronnie,
really good. Yeah.
I remember being over there taking grounders with Ronnie and just like watching him, like everything was just freaking solid.
Yeah.
Like, feeling the ground ball, making strong throws, that was intimidating, like it was also helpful, right? Because it gives you something to shoot for.
Yeah.
But I would say, Ronnie had also, like, if you put you side to side, when you were picking a team, you'd probably pick Ronnie, right?
Yeah. I would think so.
Just physically,
yeah, 100%. 100%.
Looks more the part, right?
Right.
But you were
Good
scrappy,
call.
man. Like, you were scrappy, and like you said, could hit. And I still say, like, I played the genes run through the Sandal gene pool, right? I played softball with your sister Linda and thought, holy crap, that swing is beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Linda had a beautiful swing.
She did.
Yeah.
She did, man. Something about this. It is weird how that rolls out, And we, just getting into my dad, I mean, your dad, we both talked about this not too long ago. We both came from our parents divorced, right? And you talk about how we both talk about it. We kind of got mad at our moms, right? for a time there. And, I thought about that and I'm just like, because I guess, you're a loyal guy, man, just a loyal friend, just good guy. And I know you, and I look back, I'm like, I was so loyal to my dad. I would have done anything for my dad as a kid.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I think that's right. What did you feel like when that happened? What was that like for you?
Yeah, no, 100%. I was probably like, so I'm one of 6 kids, right? I've got 3 older sisters, younger brother, and we're all, good Catholic family. We're 7 years apart from top to bottom. Like, we're close, right?
Yes.
So we were all in the house at the same time. We all saw what was going on. And I mean, my parents should have got divorced. I mean, just based on, like their relationship and, whatever. But I was my dad's most loyal to him, probably to a fault.
Wow.
Right. But I was the one that was always, I'd hear stuff in the house and I was always sticking up for my dad. And that invariably caused angst with my mom. Right.
Right.
Which carries on in life and eventually, I mean, my mom and I had a really good, strong relationship, but it took work and a while to get back there. Right.
Right. It's weird because we didn't get any counseling back then when that stuff happened. Right. It was just like, you move on. You don't even, can you deal with it? And you never really talk about it much. And you don't know, like the other households that are together, you're like, okay, is there something missing? But I think what you just told me about being very loyal to your dad, like I was too, we start missing the dad figure. And it kind of screws you up a little bit. And you don't realize it until you get older, right? Like, wow.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Gap there that it mattered, man. And yeah, it's so cool that I got to like know you, and then we've come so far to talk about even that. And it's like we were kind of the same on that level of really idolizing our dads. At the end of the day, it was our dad's fault that there was a divorce, not our mom.
Right. It's funny.
It's
funny too, like listening to your podcast, when I hear your mom is a crackerjack and I just think of your mom, like I think, wow, I have empathy for your mom and what she must have gone through. Right. Because everyone loves your dad. Right. And rightfully so. Right.
Right.
But she had an experience there too that was probably different, I'm guessing. So, I mean, for whatever reason, I have empathy for your mom's walk in this whole thing.
Yeah, thanks, man. Yeah, and I do too now. And it's just it is a missing piece though that you don't realize, you don't talk about, and you start to realize like, okay, what you really have in common with people as you get older, and that kind of stuff sticks, versus someone whose dad may stay there and school them in certain things all the way through until they're in the business world, right?
Right.
And you kind of got to navigate things on your own when you don't have that really happening, which is
especially back then, Jeff. I mean, like you're right. Like I don't know what the statistics were and what the divorce rate was back then, but like you and I, like our family situation was the exception, right? I mean, there weren't a lot of divorces.
No.
And
no.
I went to a Catholic grade school. My
Right.
parents got divorced. My parents got divorced in between my 8th grade and freshman year. I didn't have anyone to talk to about it.
Right.
And I even say, like, I probably dealt with that divorce 15 years later.
Yeah.
I mean, it took me that long to understand that, number one, like, there was even something to deal with. Like, it was affecting me in certain negative ways. And number two, like, even how to do it. You got to navigate it all on your own.
All on your own, man. And you said 8th grade is freshman year. Yeah, mine was freshman year. Same similar time in a young man's life. That's tough. I got to tell you, because I've done a lot of study. Read books on Iron John. It's like you really need your father then. At that time, you really do.
Yeah.
In a lot of lessons, just to really say, hey, okay, get ready to where you're about to go. And so, and there wasn't anyone to talk to back then, man. But yeah.
No, I'll tell you this though. Can I tell you just a quick little anecdote story? Like, so you need men in your life, right? And if I look back at my life, I was always looking for that man who could, could mentor me, or I could learn from.
Totally.
And freshman year in football, I'll never forget it. Played a game against Nile. I had a great game. Like, I remember, I think I returned a kickoff for a touchdown. Great game. It was a tough game. We won.
Right.
We won like with a late touchdown. And our coach, Jim Block, who was also our year-and-I baseball coach, right?
Right. Great. Yeah.
Walking off the field, the end of the game, he comes up to me, puts his arm around me, and he says, "Mac, if I ever have a son, I want him to be like you."
Oh man, that's awesome.
And that, like, okay, I'm 62, and I was 14 at the time. I don't know what the math is on that, but it's a lot of years, right? And I still remember that.
Right.
And so, but we were blessed. I guess what I'm trying to say is to have a lot of really positive, a positive experience at Glenbrook South, and guys that did care about us. Guys that did care about us.
You're right, man. That's and you remember that, right? Because that's a big moment in your life. For someone to say that, like a guy like him, best baseball coach I ever had, Jim Block, best man coaching. And not to say that he knew baseball more than anyone else. It's just he knew how to handle kids, like young kids. They're boys. They're being men, and he also handled me and Ronnie really well for who we were.
That must have been difficult. Yeah.
And Ronnie loved him too. And to understand that, hey man, I don't have to, treat these guys like you can come up and say, okay, yeah, I know your situation. And if he wanted to favor someone, he didn't care because it's like he treated everyone a little differently for who they were. Right. And I liked that. Right. And sometimes I didn't feel that going to college, but because then it's like, oh, I'm going to prove that, you're not special. Right. And that's just a negative way to go. Block went the opposite way. Which was amazing too, and why me and Ronnie today still talk about he's the best coach we had.
I can remember, and you were probably involved in this because I can remember sitting on the infield like in summer ball, right? Mm-hmm. Like after practice, he'd always sit us down and give us a little talk. I can remember him talking about just like it's okay to care about each other, right? It's okay to love each other, but and I'm like that. So those were the messages he was giving us, like, which we needed, right? Maybe some of us were getting it at home, but a lot of us weren't. And he recognized
that. Right on, man. Totally. And another good guy I just thought of was Dave Tosh in Pony League. Who did you play Pony League with? What team were you on?
Don't remember. Yeah, I was on American Legion.
You were?
Legion.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't, But and I knew Dave Tosh, but knew of him, right? But never got to play for him or was really close to him. Yeah,
I got fortunate on that one as a kid to have someone like him there, and then to have Block. Now, speaking of Glenbrook South, what was the guy who held the towels in the shower and they're always in the locker room? That was creepy. Wasn't that creepy?
Chuck.
I don't know. Chuck. Today they'd be like he'd be
booked and put in Cook County, right?
We don't need a guy on the payroll to stand right out. And again, you got a listener. Okay, this is an open shower situation. So you got I don't know 15 shower heads in this open room, and there's the towel guy standing outside just waiting to hand you a towel. Like what? Why do we need that guy on the payroll? Like I can pick up my own towel.
Still, right? It was disturbing. We all said it, right? And how can not a faculty member like me, like, hey, maybe this isn't right. Maybe this isn't right. And maybe another thing isn't right, that having these kids as freshmen swim naked in an Olympic-sized pool.
I tell that story to people, and as I'm telling it, I feel like that they're just saying, what is wrong with your school? Like, and I can't even justify it. Like, because there's no like rationale, like, maybe, people don't have swimming suits. So, like we'll just let them swim naked. and remember the pool, like it was a great high school, great facilities, but the pool had like this underwater viewing area.
Oh, it was a whale watching window.
Yeah.
Literally.
Like
it was as big as you would go to an aquarium and see these little kids flailing in there.
I remember marching out of the locker room, like, cause didn't we kind of all go out together or something like that? And we'd all kind of walk out naked and then sit on those metal benches and just wait for the, I'm telling the story right now and I can't even believe I'm telling it. Like, why did that exist?
Dude, it's just like really, it's like seriously, like, we put up with a lot, and we were like, all right. No one complained and went home like, hey, Mom, Dad, they made me naked today. Can you come and help me out here? Because then there's this creepy guy giving towels by the shower. So can someone do something about him? No, let's move on.
It's a wonder we had stuff to deal with when we were older.
Right? And I got to ask you this question because, you played football and baseball, lettered in both or just great in both. What's the difference between Glenbrook South and Glenbrook North? Not that anyone's going to care besides the people that live in Northbrook and Glenview, but just, when you have dueling schools, what do you think was different about North than South?
Well, and you remember when I taught for 2 years, and I
that's right.
I taught at Glenbrook North for a year.
So then I'm asking the right guy. What do you think was different?
Yeah, I mean, as well off as we were in Glenview, like I think there was, I don't think there's a whole lot of difference, but I think there was more money there.
There you go. Bingo. I think so too. That's why they had lights in the football field and they had a baseball field that looked like ours looked like a sandlot.
Yeah.
Right?
Ours, dude. The infield that we had the field grounders on. I mean, listen, I shouldn't have been a third baseman anyway, but though that was like it was like some guy went out there with a 7-iron right before him was just like flailing away,
Right.
Like just little divots everywhere.
It was brutal. And I was just thinking, and North looked cooler. The school somehow just seemed like it was, I don't know. And we had a pretty cool school,
that was great.
We had a really cool school, big school, both big schools, right? Division 5, the top level, right? Weren't we 5A or whatever, right?
Maybe 6 or 7A. Yeah, it was whatever the highest was.
Yeah. Oh, however high it was. Yeah, we were there. We had a lot of students. Now, after high school, we kind of go our ways, and then we kind of reconnect later on, which was so cool. You moved to Arizona. You lived next to my sister in Scottsdale, and I would come down from LA a lot, and we got to really get our friendship back together and go to another level. And what was so cool is, you guys then became, Terry, and Dan were in my first movie. The only guys I put from the neighborhood of growing up in the movie. What was that like? That
was an incredible experience, like all around, right? I mean, like what an honor that you bestowed on us to put us in your movie. First of all, three knuckleheads. It's
weird though that I did pick you guys, and then we now are like on this thread for the last years.
Right.
The 4 of us. It's crazy.
You know, so go ahead.
I still have that picture. I still have the picture of the four of us and the little kid that that played whatever his name. I don't remember the character's name.
Yeah,
but no, you know what?
Yeah.
Who did the cannonball? That was it was a great experience on a lot of different levels. Like, it was cool to be in a movie set and just to kind of see what that's like and experience it. And we talk about this. I learned so much from that when I watch a movie or TV today, like I got to see you make that movie, and I got to see like the first of all, I got to see it filmed and just learned about, just the director of continuity and like all this stuff.
Right.
I had no clue about. The person walking around with the ring with all the little photos, that, oh, you need to move that beer glass over here,
Right.
And then I got to see like the first cut of the movie with like no soundtrack, no nothing, and then I got to see it progress from there, and to have different edits, and like, it was just cool. So now I when I watch a movie now, like, so much of my experience of watching a movie now is about like what I learned way back then.
Yeah, man. It was cool, man. I mean, go back to that time, and that was my first movie, Liar's Poker, and it's actually out now digitally. It got a digital release just now, so which is cool. I mean, my first film, and I'm proud of the film. It was done well. Yeah, there's things you miss in there, but boy, man, and yeah, to think back, that was almost 30 years ago.
I'll tell you what else though. You know what else was like really cool? I don't think we've ever talked about this. And I don't remember like what experience you had leading up to that, like directing or being behind a camera or whatever. But seeing you in your element, and for the very first time, was really cool. And it was cool to see you in that environment and do your thing when you were just learning how to do your thing. But I don't remember exactly, but you filmed it in like some ridiculously low amount of
20 3 days. Yeah, for that kind of film. Yeah, and then it's cool that you say that, man, because I was so prepared for that. Like, I did a couple of plays, but that getting ready to direct, I just did so much research, and you don't know, and you look back and you go, oh God, yeah, there's so many things you can miss, but I did stay consistent with the tone of this intensity and foreboding kind of feel throughout. So I'm proud of that part of it, but yeah, man, it was cool, and I almost was kind of nervous bringing like you guys around, because it's like, these guys, all right, they don't know if I could do this or not, but I'm like, screw it.
Right. Yeah, but that's the other thing is you knew exactly what you wanted the tone to be. Less is more. I remember that, right?
Yeah.
Less is more. And you did not waver from that. I don't care if you were directing Flea or Richard Tyson or what. You did not waver from that. And right, wrong, or indifferent, like that. But that's who you are. Like you know what you know. You know what you want, and you sink your teeth into it, and you just go for it, right? And I respect that about you.
Well, thank you, Don. Thank you about that. You learn. You go, okay, yeah, but you got to go with what you know, and then you learn more, and you do better, right? It's kind of like that, the evolution of a filmmaker. And sometimes, people are lucky enough to keep going, right? And it's hard when you don't get another chance for a while, then you go back again, right? So that filmmaking process is tough, because I kind of look at like sports. If you're playing it all the time, and you're getting better and better all the time, quicker, but it's different in filmmaking, man. Yeah, man. That you with Flea, you talk about Flea, and you guys sat at the table by the pool, and you all had a line. I gave you guys a line, and you had to give these looks playing Liar's Poker with the dollar bills. And I gotta say, you gave the best look. You definitely gave the best look.
I hope Terry O'Brien is listening to this, because he always gives me a hard time. He tells me that I overacted. Let me. My line was 11 nines.
11.
That's it. 11 nines. And Terry, Liar's Poker never comes up without Terry telling me that I overacted. And I'm like, yeah, okay. First of all, I'm not an actor, but 11 nines. Like, I don't know how you can overact on 11 nines. Like,
That's funny, man.
Hey, you mentioned Flea. A little funny story is the
Yeah.
very first day of shooting. We're out in L.A. and we have to meet at some place, and some van comes and picks us up, and it's me and Dan and Terry and I think just one other guy, right? And we get in the van,
Right.
and it's a little like it's a little not dirty, but just a little nothing special van, and we're sitting in there, and there's this guy who's just talking, and later on I learn it's Flea. I have no idea that it's Flea. Like, but that was also cool. Like literally, I remember sitting between takes and just talking with Flea, like about it. I think at the time he had a daughter that was about the same age as Jenny, and
oh wow,
that's awesome. And to see him, kind of try to do something different outside his creative zone, was cool.
Yeah, he was a cool guy, man. And we're talking about Flea from the Red Hot Chili Peppers. That was in my first film. Yeah, and you guys got to know him just sitting at the table because we shot that table most of the day,
Right.
So that was cool, man. And then we, we stay friends for, we've always been friends, but there's times you go in and out of, your friendship because you're busy, something else happens. And now, you got remarried and you got a great wife, Sarah. And me and Christy got married and you guys all came and it was great. And then, now, you guys came out to LA last year. It's just great to stay connected and then to evolve, like literally, like guys that knew how they were when they were kids,
So we have that history, that connection that goes way back. And then, then life happens and, you go on, you do different things, you grow apart, you come back together. But just the fact that, we always have that history and that commonality and the joint experiences, and you and Christy got married like 2-3 months before Sarah and I did.
Right.
And I remember, I'm not on Instagram anymore, but I remember like Christy was one of the ones I used to watch on Instagram, and I loved the stuff she posted. Very creative, very artistic. I loved like whatever it was that she would post about you guys, because from afar, I'm like, I was seeing like how special your relationship is, and I just thought it was really cool. I love it's a little thing, but I love the intro of the podcast. Hello, like it's it's
cool,
awesome.
Man. Yeah, talk about you've been following the podcast, and which is so cool. You, Terry, Dan have been really following your all cool Cracker Jacks. I think you were the first cool Cracker Jack on here, with then Scott Nelson, or both of you were at about the same time.
He was first.
What's it been like?
He was first. I'll give it to Scott Nelson. He was first.
Was he first? Scott was first. Yeah. So what's it been like, man? Tell me what you think of it and everything. I mean, be brutally honest.
No, I love it. I think, listen, it's hard to be completely unbiased because you're my friend, and
right.
So I can't separate that, right? So I'm not going to lie, and but
right.
I really, really like it. It entertains me. I love. One of my favorite things is watching Seth Meyers or Jimmy Fallon interview people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just because I interview interesting people, because I want to hear like what their story is and what they have to say, about whether the movie that they're selling or the book they just wrote or whatever.
Right.
So I enjoy you, whether it's Joe Montana or Joel Murray or, all the players that you interviewed. I enjoy listening to you ask them questions, and most importantly, letting them talk. Right? Like to me, that's
cool.
That's kind of the thing. But like the baseball aspect of it, to me, is fascinating. Like to hear Joey Amalfitano,
right?
And to hear like Joey Banks talk about his dad, and to hear like Rich Nye and Tommy John. Tommy John was cracking me up. Tommy John. I don't think I ever said this to you, but he starts out, I had 2 pitches, fastball, curveball, fastball, curveball, fastball, curveball. Later on in the episode, he's like, well, I would throw my fastball and then my cutter. And I'm like, wait a minute, I thought you only had 2 pitches.
Oh, it's slider,
Yeah, slider, yeah. But, whatever, right? But he was talking about pitching to someone. I don't think it was your dad, but it was someone, and he was like, "Oh no, you start with the fastball low and away, or curveball low and away, inside fastball, curveball low and away, curveball low and away."
Yeah,
and I'm
my
like,
dad.
to me,
Yeah.
like that is, it's fascinating to me hear these guys talk about baseball, and especially old time baseball, right? But baseball in a way that I never got to experience, but I think anyone that ever played the game like thinks about, wants to know what it's really like.
Right. Yeah. Thanks, man. Yeah, it's been great, and to get guys like Billy, and Randy, and guys that are still around that play with my dad, and it feels special. But that time was a special time, man, for all of us growing up. We remember that time in so many ways. You got a different perspective, but watching the games, you probably remember GN a lot. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. Hey.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, man. So, but it's been so cool, man. It's been a great ride, and I'm so glad I got you on, man. And thank you for being a cool Cracker Jack, dude. I love you, and thanks for being, an actual Cracker Jack. Appreciate it, bud.
I love you too, my friend. Thanks for having me on, and I look forward to your final episode this season, and many, many more to come.
Thanks, brother. Tell Sarah we said hello. All right, brother. Love
likewise.
you. Talk to you soon.
See you.
All right.
See you. All right.
Bye. Thanks for listening to our show. Special thanks to our cool Cracker Jacks, Scott Nelson, and of course Jim McCauley, Debbie Foley, Terry Rankin-Gurovitz, Terry O'Brien, Gary Tallman, and Anne-Marie Pascule.
This show is made possible because of all of them and all of our subscribers. If you want to support the show and be a cool Cracker Jack yourself, subscribe on our Patreon page. Click the link below this episode or go to the Patreon tab on our website, www.peanutspopcornandcrackerjacks.com.
Remember to click the follow button for next week's episode and leave a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. I say that no one leaves reviews, but try to leave one. This is the last two shows. Say something about our first season. Please, please, please.
And don't hesitate to write. Give us suggestions. Tell us how you're liking the show. Email jeff.ppcpodcast@gmail.com.
For my closing quote, the way a team plays as a whole determines its success. You may have the greatest bunch of individual stars in the world, but if they don't play together, the club won't be worth a dime. Babe Ruth.
Toodaloo.
SantoFilms.com, the place to buy This Old Cub DVDs, posters, and This Old Cub t-shirts. Get yourself one now at SantoFilms.com.
And our book, Ravens in the Rain, is available on Amazon in paperback, ebook, and audiobook. If you want a signed copy, go to SantoFilms.com. Thank you, and happy holidays.